welcome back to the Lemon Abroad. So today I wanted to do kind of a different video than I usually do on my channel. As some of you may know, I also have a website called The Lemon Abroad, and this is where I usually write travel guides to places I've been to and other articles about traveling, preparing to travel, planning your trips, etc. So today I wanted to talk through one of my recent blog posts, and that is about a trip that I took to Budapest last month. I thought it would be fun to just kind of talk through it and expand on some things in case you are also planning a trip to Budapest or if you are just curious about visiting there. I had wanted to travel to Budapest for a really long time, and I am so glad that I finally did. It's a really beautiful city. It's a lot of fun and there is so much to do, but I was really stressed about planning this trip. I think because it is a relatively compact city, it is really popular, for example, as a weekend trip. I found so many blogs online about 3-day itineraries, how to see everything, the best way to organize your time, and honestly, I was so overwhelmed. I was trying to chart a path through the city exactly as I could follow it, and I've never really had that experience when planning a trip before. I did have a feeling that once I got there, I would be perfectly fine to find my way, and of course I was. All that planning did really serve me in the end because I think I got a good idea of where things were and how to organize my time. But ultimately, of course, the best things were surprises and things that we just kind of stumbled upon. So first of all, I will say Budapest is stunning. The architecture is absolutely amazing, and it's such a grand city. Everything is big and impressive and monumental, and there's so much beautiful Art Nouveau architecture, and I love this style of architecture as well. So many things in Budapest were built for the 1,000-year anniversary of the city, which took place in 1896. And everything just has these really beautiful, intricate details. Of course, the landscape of Budapest is so beautiful with the Danube River cutting through it. I will also say now that I'm sorry for any incorrect pronunciations of things. I really will try my best. So based on the way that we could buy tickets from Palermo to Budapest, we actually ended up having 4 full days there. We got in really late on a Wednesday evening, actually Thursday morning, and we flew out Sunday night. So I think this gave us a really good amount of time. Budapest is really compact and they have amazing public transportation, so it was very easy to get around to the different sides of the city and the different sites. Also, I would say that I think the city is very well designed for visitors in the sense that they know where people are trying to go and they'll try and find a way to get you there. We also did have time to take a day trip outside of the city that I'll talk about later. And I think that having that extra time meant that we were able to see so much, but we didn't feel rushed, and we even had extra time to just relax and do the things that we were enjoying. It also would have given us enough time, for example, if there had been some bad weather, which fortunately there wasn't. But all in all, I'm glad that we just had that extra time so that we didn't feel under pressure and that we had to rush around to try and see everything. So we decided to visit Budapest in October just because of our schedule, but I also think that that's probably one of the best times to visit. Now, I think you can enjoy visiting any time of year you go, but Budapest really has a reputation for being a fall city, and I do think we were just able to really appreciate seeing the leaves changing color on the trees. The weather during the day was really warm, and at night it actually did get a little cold, but it was more crisp, cozy weather, and I really enjoyed being there for that season. Now, when we were looking for a place to stay, the thing that was most important to me was, of course, the location and also having a place that we could check in late since our flight wasn't arriving until after midnight. So based on that, I found an apartment that did have a self check-in, and it ended up being in just the perfect location. It's off of a square, and I'll put the name here because I don't think I can pronounce it. Now, this location was perfect. It was so central. It was near every form of public transportation that we needed to take: the tram, the metro, the bus, The airport bus came almost directly to our front door. It was in a walking location to the old Jewish quarter where now there are a lot of restaurants and shops and things to see. So it was a small apartment, but it was everything we needed just for a few days trip. And it even had a small terrace so we could sit outside and have tea or play cards or, just talk about what we were gonna do that day. So like I said, it was very close to all the different public transportation that we needed. And I was blown away with the public transportation here. It was so efficient, it was so clean, it was so calm, it was so well organized. Obviously, Hungarian is a very difficult language. So for example, on the buses, they would have screens with the names of the next stops. Every person who I spoke to who worked for the public transportation was very friendly, the bus drivers or the people who worked in the train station. They even have an app called Budapest Go that helps you plan your trips, and you can follow yourself, as you're on the bus as it's heading to its destination. I mean, I was really impressed by this. There were ticket machines everywhere so you could buy your public transportation tickets. And of course, you do need to validate them. We were checked by people on the tram and at the metro station. So I would definitely make sure that you have validated your tickets. Okay, so obviously one of the most popular attractions and things to do in Budapest is the thermal baths. And honestly, I was agonizing over which bath we should go to. I was looking them all up, looking up YouTube reviews, and of course, once I got there and I saw it for myself and I talked to some people who had been to multiple locations, the thing I will say is that you will probably enjoy yourself wherever you go. If you are open to the experience and if you are in good company, either with other people or by yourself, I think you'll have a good time. There are the more well-known baths. The thing about deciding between a bath is that many of them have some outdoor pools and some indoor pools. When I was looking at the baths, at this location, maybe this type of bath was closed, and at another location, this one was closed, probably because they all have to be doing maintenance at some point. It does seem that all the baths are maybe under the same kind of system in the sense that all of their websites are designed the same. And from what I can tell, they use the same type of wristband system, which is really amazing. So when you go to the bath, you are given a wristband to wear, and this wristband will either open your locker or your cabin, depending on what type of reservation you have. I think to get a cabin, it wasn't that much more expensive, maybe a couple dollars, at least at the time I went. So like I said, I think the experience more depends on you. At some of the baths, you do have to pay attention to the schedule though, because maybe on certain days they are reserved for certain genders. So ultimately, I ended up choosing the Gellert baths. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And I chose it for a couple of reasons. One reason is that compared to the other very famous bath that I will write here because I really don't know how to say it, Gellert baths seem to have more pools inside, and since I'm fair-skinned, I didn't want to be spending the whole day outside in the sun. There are some outside pools, but most of them are inside. And also, I was really attracted to the architecture there. Of course, Art Nouveau decorations, which inside are so beautiful. It's a really calming environment, and I just really am so glad that we went there. Now, I'm not sure about the locker rooms because I decided to book a ticket with the cabin. The cabin is just a small room that you can go into to change, and you can also leave your stuff there. And again, you lock it with your wristband. When you go up into the area with the pools, there is the beautiful long lap pool. This is a room temperature lap pool, and it's really for swimming laps only. There is a lifeguard there also to make sure that you only can enter with a swim cap, but nowhere else did you need to have a swimming cap. When you get to the end of the lap pool, there are two separate areas that are mirrors of each other. So in each area, you will find steam rooms, saunas, different thermal pools, and also the area for massages, depending on whether your masseuse is male or female. I would definitely check out both areas because they have different temperature pools. The thermal pools range in temperature. There's 36 degrees Celsius Celsius, which is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, so your body temperature. There's also 38 degrees Celsius, which is about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and 40 degrees Celsius, which is 104 degrees Fahrenheit. If you are brave, there is the cold plunge pool, which is 18 degrees Celsius, and I later did the conversion to see that that's about 64 degrees Fahrenheit, but honestly, it felt much colder than that. I could not get in past my ankles. I did book the tickets ahead of time because I wanted to make sure we could have a massage while we were there, which have limited time slots. And again, we went in October, so maybe it's not peak tourist season. The first day we went was on a Thursday morning, and it really wasn't that crowded. We did decide to come back on Sunday afternoon since our flight wasn't until the evening, and that day it was much more crowded. I think with just a few hours, you can go to the spa and you can really have a full experience. You can try out the different pools. There's a cafe, so you could have coffee or lunch, for example. On one of the days there was really sunny weather, so we went to have our lunch outside on the terrace. Also overlooking the lap pool, there are lounge chairs, so we were able to just sit up there and relax for a little bit. This is really nice because, of course, while you're there to enjoy the thermal pools, it's not advised to be sitting in that hot water for a long period of time. So it's nice that you can go in for a few minutes and then take a break, go do something else, and then come back. Okay, so as you may know by now, Budapest came together as one city by joining two different cities on either side of the river. You have Buda on the left-hand side and Pest on the right side. Buda is a quieter area. It's definitely more residential, where Pest is really the more commercial side of the city. It's more lively, more touristic, and you can really feel that when you visit them. We honestly did not spend very much time on the left-hand side of the city. We went there to go to the baths, and then we also spent about a half day there exploring the historical sites. So one morning we took the bus from our location up to the Castle Hill. We started at the Fisherman's Bastion, which is this really large fortification, and it's really beautiful. You overlook the river, you overlook the Pest side of the city, the Parliament building. I loved the architecture there. There's also the St. Matthias Church that is located right there. However, this is where I first realized that there were a lot of tourists in the city. Obviously, it's a major tourist destination, and I had seen tourists around, but I hadn't noticed them all in one place like that before until we got to this area. However, as soon as we left that immediate vicinity, we really didn't see anyone else around until we got to the area that is the Buda Castle. So we did have a quiet breakfast at a really cute cafe called Flat White, and then we made our way over to the castle complex, where we again found many tourists. We actually were walking by the presidential palace when they were doing the changing of the guard, so that was a really spontaneous, cool thing to see. And then we walked around the gardens outside of the castle area. Up there are some museums that you can visit as well, so maybe if I ever have the chance to go back, I would love to see, for example, the National Art Museum and some other things like that. So as I mentioned, most of the things we did were on the Pest side of the river, so the right bank of the river. There are many different attractions there. There is the St. Ivan's Basilica. There's also the Central Market Hall, which is an enormous food hall. And on the first floor, they have just a regular fruit and vegetable market where also locals come to do their shopping. They also have a lot of stores selling paprika, which is, I think, the national taste of Hungary. You have hot paprika and sweet paprika. So we did take some of that as a souvenir to cook with and remember our time in Hungary. The upper floor of the Central Hall is more for souvenirs. So for example, I got a secret box. This was the souvenir I really wanted. So for example, it's a box, you can't open it. there's a secret way to do it. The next thing I will tell you is the absolute highlight of our trip. It is one of the things I have wanted to do forever and that I knew I needed to do if I ever made it to Budapest. And that is to go on the Danube River cruise. So the river cruise is very inexpensive. It was about 25 euro for 2 people. And I think they're pretty standard. For example, it's a 1-hour trip from the north part of the city down to the south and then back up to the dock. And usually they will have some kind of, welcome drink, maybe a glass of wine or juice. Now, we booked our trip during the sunset hour, meaning that on the way down, we were able to see the sunset over the river. It was incredibly beautiful. And then on the way back, the night had set in and all of these incredible buildings and landmarks are lit up, including the Parliament building, which is just so magnificent and impressive and really unlike anything I had seen before. Even if I had seen photos of it, seeing it in real life was just something else and definitely so memorable for me and just, like I said, the highlight of the trip. So even before I knew that I was for sure going to Budapest, I had already started to see some restaurants on Instagram, for example, and I had saved them just in case I would ever go there one day. The first restaurant we went to is actually a Lebanese restaurant called Mozata. I was so excited to have some Arabic food. We actually went on their 4th birthday, so there was a little party there, which was really cute, and everyone who worked there was so friendly. We really ordered a spread. First, they had an amazing menu of both alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks. So we wanted to order some little plates so we could try many different things. We got something called hummus fate, which I hadn't actually heard of before. It's a dish of chickpeas that are cooked whole, and then there is yogurt and bread chips and pine nuts on top, and that was delicious. We also, of course, had to get some falafel, which is fried minced chickpeas, and kibbeh, which is not for me because I'm vegetarian, but it was kind of like minced beef and bulgur, and then those were fried as well. And also something called cheese rakakat, which is cheese wrapped in a dough and then fried, which was so good. And I got it with something called toum, which is a garlic sauce for dipping. So as you can tell, I was just in heaven. For dessert, we had kanafe, which is probably one of my favorite things. It is a dessert made of cheese and shredded dough topped with sugar syrup and pistachios. It was amazing, and we had so many leftovers. Thankfully, we had a mini fridge in our apartment that we could keep them in and a microwave so we could cook them the next day. Now, one of the things that Budapest is known for is its ruined pubs. These were derelict buildings that had been abandoned that people kind of reclaimed and occupied and turned into really cool places to get together. So one of the really famous ones was very close to our place, and it's called Szentendre. I hope I'm saying that right. As we were heading there, I could already kind of see that there were a lot of people heading in the same direction, and many people who had already started their night, we can say. When we got inside, it really was too crowded and overwhelming for me. We did do a walk around, and I'm really glad that I got to see it. I think it would be a really cool place, but for me, there were just too many people. However, on the way there, we passed by a restaurant that looked so cute, so rustic, charming, and on the way back, we decided to stop and look at their menu, and it turns out that they had a vegetarian version of the traditional paprikash dish, which I believe is usually served with chicken. So of course I thought that I wouldn't be able to try it, but then I saw that they had this version that used mushrooms instead. We tried to make a reservation for the next evening, but they were already all booked up, and in fact they were almost all booked up for the entire weekend, but we were able to find a spot there for lunch. The restaurant is called Ghetto Goulash, and I'm so glad we went, and I'm so glad that I got to try this dish. It's served alongside something called galushka, which just means noodles in Hungarian, and from a glance it looks like spätzle. It was so good, and I'm so glad that I got to try some traditional Hungarian food. And then on the last night we were there, there was one last food thing that I had to check off my list, and that was visiting a place called Gelato Rosa, and it's an ice cream shop where they have artisanal flavors and they serve your gelato in the shape of a rose. So for so many reasons, I absolutely had to try it. I had a basil lemon sorbet in the middle of the flower, and then the petals were a white chocolate lavender, and it was absolutely one of the best ice creams I've had ever, and definitely one of the prettiest. Now, one thing that was very important to me when visiting Budapest was also trying to take a day trip outside of the city to see another side of the country. And I'm so glad that we were able to do this. We went to a small town called Szentendre, which was very easy to get to on the public transportation. In fact, there were several day trips that I saw if you look up places that are accessible from Budapest via public transportation. I chose this one because it did seem to be one of the most popular ones. And of course, when we got there, there were also many tourists there. We took the metro to one of the larger metro stations inside Budapest. And I did go to the teller to ask about the tickets because it is a little confusing since you need to have a regular Budapest metro ticket and what's called the extension ticket. So he was so helpful in making sure that we had all the right tickets and we knew which ones to validate, just in case there were any controls. It was really nice though to take the train, to be able to see the countryside going by, really see how different the life is from inside the big capital city. The town was very cute, and as I said, it was a little crowded, but the first stop we went to was a small restaurant where we could try langos, which is a traditional food that is fried dough. So I mean, already it sounds amazing. And then sour cream and shredded cheese are put on top. And it was in this really cute location where there is this really tiny alley of stairs going up, and you walk up the stairs and then it's just this little hole in the wall with a couple picnic tables, and it was so good. And then we continued walking up the little alley to a place where there is a church and a lookout, so you can just see all the different rooftops, and it's just a really nice area to walk around. So I was really glad that we got to see this other, more local side to Hungary. We also took a walk along the Danube and then went back to Budapest after having just a nice half day there. I think about 10 years ago when I was first living in Europe, Budapest was really considered a budget-friendly city. It could still be that way now. I mean, any city can be budget friendly depending on how you plan it, but I would definitely say it's now more moderately priced. Budapest, while it's part of the European Union, still uses its own currency, and I found that when I got to Budapest, prices had gotten more expensive than I had seen, for example, on blogs or on websites that were even written 1 year ago. The currency is called forint, and when we visited there in October of 2023, it was about 2,000 forint to €5. So that also wasn't the easiest conversion to keep in my head when I was trying to figure out how expensive things were, which is important, of course, to always keep in mind when you are out and about, so you know exactly how much you're paying for something. I personally like to make sure I have cash on hand when I travel, so I did go to a local bank to take some money out of the ATM, but I found that cards were really widely accepted. Even, for example, at little street markets, these vendors there would have card machines, and it seems to be the preferred method of payment, although cash is still accepted. And then just on a side note, when you do take out money at a foreign ATM, I always like to make sure that I go to an actual bank, and preferably when the bank is open. That way, if something goes wrong, there are the people who work at the bank there. And I did see a lot of just kind of like private ATMs in the streets in the tourist destinations, but I don't like to use these because I have an idea that there's probably some kind of fees or commissions attached to them. So my advice is always just to go to a local bank. And of course, I always look up what is the tipping culture of a place I'm visiting. And here I found that in pretty much every restaurant, if not every restaurant we went to, there was a service fee already included in the bill of 10 to 15%. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Like I said, it's just to talk through some of the things and experiences I had while planning my trip and how I found them to be in Budapest. Let me know if you are planning a trip there soon and if this kind of video was useful or interesting for you. I'll see you next time.